everybody, this is No Excuses. I'm your host, Rodney Arbona, and I am with my very special guest today, Emilio Iodice, who's got a very illustrious career, but more importantly, he takes his knowledge and now he's giving back to making sure our youth is going to be very successful. How are you, Emilio?
I'm great, Rodney. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Very much.
My pleasure. So what made you come up with this concept, and what's the name of your new book?
The new book is called When Courage Was the Essence of Leadership, Lessons from History.
Wow, that's a great line, and it really opens up what you're discussing in that book.
Yes, it does. And it's about courageous leadership, which is what I believe we need today. We need not only competent leadership, but we need leaders who are courageous, they're brave, and to take on not only the big issues, the big challenges, but the big social, economic, and cultural problems that we all face in this world.
That's wonderful. Now, you had a wonderful career yourself. So when you put this all together, how far back in your career did you say, I'm going to use the elements of my career and give it forward into this book?
Well, I started thinking about it actually when I was in the executive office of the president. When I worked in Washington for a number of years, and then when I went into the diplomatic corps, I already started thinking of how to use my experience working with great leaders and also taking on leadership roles and someday giving back to the world what I learned. And that's what I've been doing as an educator, as an administrator. I was the director of the campus of Loyola University of Chicago in Rome for 10 years. Before that, I was with Lucent Technologies as a vice president of global operations. And before that, I was a successful American diplomat. So I've done a lot of things.
You sure have. So working with leaders at that level in Washington, you can say it on camera, Fox. How difficult is it?
It's difficult because you have to get their attention span.
Sure.
This is the biggest problem I find with political leadership in particular. They have a very short attention span. They have their own agenda, their own concerns. Obviously, they're very political,
right,
and they're electoral. So these concerns are the things that actually make them move. And if you can't hold on to their attention span for a long time and get something that is truly of interest to them and to the things that they're doing, nothing gets done.
Wow, so this must be the most difficult elevator pitch you ever had to get involved in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So knowing that the attention span was only 90 seconds, that you had to say what you had to say, and you had to make sure that they understood the value of it very, very quickly.
You know, I know we all like to judge our leaders and think they're not doing a whole lot because we're on the outside looking in. I honestly couldn't imagine being any one of them with how diverse every country is today. And the amount of things that need to get done in such, let's say, little time that they actually have. If it's a 2-year to 4-year cycle, boy, 2 years, 4 years goes by for me like this.
Yes.
And I don't have much of an agenda. How did you manage to sit them down, get them to pay attention, and then how much of what you got them to pay attention to that you actually were able to execute?
I would say that in the vast majority of cases, over 90%.
That's wonderful.
But I wouldn't say it was me. I would say that it was the issues and the problems that we were facing at the time, that they were so critical and so important that we had to come up with solutions.
Absolutely.
And people who can solve problems.
Right.
And look at those problems as opportunities as well as solutions. This changes everything. And that's why they were able to listen and they were willing to listen.
That's wonderful, and I like how you put it too, because everything does have a solution to
Absolutely.
it. Rather than looking at brick walls, I like to look at the crack, and I can get through that crack sooner or later if I just pick at it long enough, right?
Certainly. That should be the attitude. If we look at every single challenge as an opportunity for us, and not just a difficulty, everything changes. At this new leadership center that was created in my name at St. Barnabas High School in the Bronx.
Right. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. These young people, these young girls, want to be leaders of the future. And the most important thing I told them was not to look at a difficulty as something that was just impossible to deal with, but look at it as an opportunity to show that they had skills,
right,
that they could overcome this, and that it was important for their own self-esteem.
Absolutely.
And if they could do that, everything changes in life.
Sure, and I find the best way to go against a challenge is to break that challenge down to
Yes.
micro parts.
Exactly.
Because let's face it, we all just don't wake up in the morning and run a marathon, right?
No, not at all, not at all.
So taking all your career, Lucent, working in Washington, being overseas, I can go on in your career, so we don't have that much time. When you put this book together, I can't imagine how you pick and choose what to put in this book to accomplish what you want to accomplish for our youth. So how difficult is it even for you, because you have such a vast, diverse knowledge?
It wasn't easy, so I thought about it from three aspects. Political leadership and courage in the area of the political realm. Personal leadership, where people every day have to exercise bravery in what they do. And spiritual leadership.
Beautiful.
So courage in all three areas for me were very important. And I took examples from history and from contemporary history in each one of those sectors. And I took young people as well as people who had been working in these fields for many years. So the examples cut across generations as well.
Wonderful.
So that young people as well as anybody of any age can relate to each one of these examples, because it's about examples, it's about stories. We live by stories. The great leaders of our time, and of all time, like Abraham Lincoln, told stories.
Sure did.
And those stories are the things that we remember. Jesus told stories.
Absolutely.
So we have to remember that that's the way we exist. We exist by one story after another.
Beautiful.
We call it history.
That's right. To me, stories are also like a music. The lyrics or the bars, if once you get into that song, it just repeats itself. How many times music almost sounds alike, but it creates a story and a pathway, and it provides some spiritual energy as well.
Exactly. It does. And I think each and every one of us has something to talk about.
100%.
And we each have a story to tell. And it may not be about us. It may be about our parents or people that we admire or our models. I'm often asked by people, when you have to make a decision, how do you do this? I say I have a compass. I have a compass that's led me throughout life. On one side of my compass, if I have to make a moral decision, I would say, what would Jesus do?
Absolutely.
I'm a Christian. Perhaps a Jew would say, what would Moses do? A Buddhist would say, what would Buddha do? If I have to make a managerial decision, what would Abraham Lincoln do? Why do I say Lincoln? For me, he was one of the most remarkable of all leaders.
He had some hard decisions.
Tough decisions.
At a very tough time.
And he had the integrity, the skills to make those decisions. He was tested constantly. And he overcame those tests. He passed the test. And that's why we consider him by far one of the greatest leaders of our country, at least.
I could agree with you on that. He, again, just what he did with changing our mindset on who the people were in the country. Forget about where they came from, but who were the people in the country and how we should be treating them against all odds.
Absolutely.
Nobody wanted to agree with him other than himself, but it was his passion that pushed him through, and then other people believed even more of it because of his passion. And it has a lot to do with what you're talking about. People having passion within themselves.
Passion and vision. To understand that each and every one of us is something, we're part of something much bigger.
Yes.
Much, much bigger. May I tell you a very short story?
Please.
It happened in the 1930s. The editor of a newspaper in New York City told his reporter, he said, I want you to go out and find a human interest story for Christmas Eve. And if you don't find it, I'm going to fire you. So this reporter had an incentive to go out and find something, but he was baffled as to what to do. So he goes out to a place that was a construction site, a gigantic construction site in the middle of Manhattan.
Wow.
They were building Rockefeller Center.
Wow.
And they were restoring churches as well as building these new buildings. They were doing cultural things, social things. They had a great vision for the future. Christmas Eve, and this reporter goes out there, and he finds one worker in the snow, laying bricks, one brick on top of another. And he watches him, he looks at him, and he says, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
After a few hours, he says to this Italian immigrant, who could barely speak English, and he says, sir, I've been watching you. And in this cold weather, it's freezing out here, in the snow, And yet you have the fortitude to keep doing your job. You're the only one here, laying one brick on top of another. Isn't it awful? Isn't it boring? And he looks at the reporter and he says, "Sir, you don't understand. I'm not laying bricks. I'm building a cathedral."
Beautiful.
And that man was our grandfather.
That is beautiful.
He was my grandfather.
That is a beautiful story.
And that became a wonderful story for the New York Daily News.
Well, Emilio, I'm going to leave it at that story because it's inspiring and it should let people know how important passion is and how much more to realize what you said. It's bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
Emilio, Iodice, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being on No
Rodney,
Excuses.
thank
You are
you.
an absolute pleasure.
Thank
I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll see you again. Have a great day.